thanks very much indeed. Well, we're going to take this further because within the studio is Katinka, Barysch of the Centre for European Reform, Costas Lapavitsas, who is Professor of Economics at the University of London and one of the men who claims to have predicted the Lehman crash as senior advisor to UBS, George Magnus. And welcome to you all. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Do you think, George Magnus, that political leaders are in absolute denial here?
Yes. I don't really want to believe that they aren't having privately the same sort of discussions that many of us have anyway about what should be done. But they're obviously doing a very good job at pretending that they're not addressing the key issue, which is the vicious circle that exists between the deteriorating credit of governments and the deteriorating credit of banks. And if you don't, since you can't solve the government problem overnight, you can solve the banking problem. They could bring this to a very quick stop, actually.
By doing what?
By basically announcing a credible, comprehensive program to recapitalise not all banks, but the systemically important banks that hold huge quantities of debt in the peripheral Europe.
Katinka, Barysch, I mean, a lot of people are looking to Angela Merkel now and saying, where is the leadership that you need to be showing on this one?
And she has never been a strong and quick leader, and hence the expectations were perhaps a little bit high. The political problem in Germany is that the Germans are willing to stomp up a large amount of money, but they want to keep total control of it, and they want to put a cap on it. What they don't want is any unlimited commitment to bailing out their neighbours. And that's exactly what the markets are baying for by focusing on
the position we've got into, isn't it? I mean, if what Paul was saying is right.
The second problem is with what George has been saying about recapitalising the banks. Now, it's unpopular in Germany to bail out Southern Europeans who got themselves into a mess because they spend too much. It's even less popular in Germany to bail out the bankers one more time. And that is the problem on which Angela Merkel is sitting at the moment, with her own party criticising her, with her coalition in tatters, and with the media very strongly against any further money being made available.
So, Costas, if this is all true, there is no chance that Greece is actually going to leave the euro. It's just this sort of slow, lingering propping up.
I think it's important to understand that the program applied to Greece a year and a half ago has failed totally. I think we've got to start with that. And it hasn't failed because of the weaknesses of Greece. It's failed because of the nature of the program itself. The program was badly thought out and badly applied. What is causing in Greece is actually economic devastation and social devastation. People should be clear about these things. Unemployment is at 20%. There are networks of barter emerging in the poorer areas of Athens. The hospitals are collapsing. There are people returning to the countryside because they can't make ends meet. The country is regressing very, very rapidly. So the program is untenable and it will not survive.
And the solution is what then?
The solution, I believe, is pretty clear, and your packages have shown it in many ways. Greece will have to default. Greece cannot carry the incredible burden of debt imposed on it at this stage. It will have to default. It will have to default, I believe, in a democratic and sovereign way, lift the burden of debt. Once it defaults and does that, it will have then to exit the euro, I believe, and set its economy on a proper pattern.
Way, what do you mean by that? You mean something that is controlled and agreed by the other countries?
No, I don't think so. Default is basically of two types to my mind. It can be led by the creditor and it can be led by the debtor. Yeah. We've seen ways in which default has been attempted in Greece, led by the creditor, and it hasn't worked. Default must be led by the debtor in this case to achieve significant reduction of debt. Greece needs 70%, 80% writing off of debt.
And could this be controlled if it's led by Greece?
I'd put it slightly differently. I think the default can be orderly or it can be disorderly. If it is disorderly, we're going to face a collapse of the financial system, Great Depression, terrible political outcomes. You don't even want to think about them. If it's an orderly default, which I hope is what Angela Merkel and other European leaders are kind of building towards, then it'll be done, obviously in a very messy way, but the system can survive and we can kind of move on after that. But of course, if Greece defaults, when Greece defaults, the first thing...
Do you think it is defaulting already?
I don't have any question. What you have to do is you have to prop up the Greek banking system, because otherwise it really will collapse, as I think Paul's package made clear earlier. But of course, then you have to also do the same thing for the rest of Europe, because there will be contagion. So the thing that Angela Merkel hasn't really led in terms of German voters, in my view, is that the choices are starker than she's made clear. It's not a question between bailing out foreigners and bailing out German banks. You have to do a little bit of both, and there's no choice about it. That's the pain of being a creditor country.
But even still, Katinka, you've got to a situation where this is wallpapering, right? Nobody's pretending, you've heard from Costas, nobody's pretending that Greece is getting better or it's becoming more able to deal with its problems or it's solving them.
The Germans are not that worried about Greece. Greece is a small country.
That's a euphemism.
We can keep them afloat. There is a consensus even in Germany that Greece can't repay its debt and it needs restructuring. If you could contain it, what they're trying to do at the moment is they're trying to buy time to stabilize the situation and then have that orderly default. Now, if you could contain it, they would have let Greece default a long time ago. What they're worried about is that this will spread like a wildfire through the rest of the EuroZone. So again, what they're worried about now is that once it comes to the point where they also have to bail out, perhaps